If you have learned how to multiply one-digit numbers and you've been working on memorizing your multiplication tables, then you are already on your way to multiplying two-digit numbers. Let's take a look at a multiplication problem involving two-digit numbers. So in this problem behind me, 33 times 21, we are going to multiply together two-digit numbers. Now, we know that we could solve this problem by adding 33 to itself 21 times. But this is a very slow approach, and most likely you would make a large number of mistakes having to add together so many numbers. 33 plus 33 plus 33, on and on, 21 times. So instead of using that approach, we are going to multiply. So let's look at how to multiply two-digit numbers together. First of all, I want to begin by taking my two-digit numbers and stacking them vertically. So I'm going to put my 33 on top and my 21 on the bottom, but I want to be really careful and work really neatly, making sure that I line up the two digits that are in the ones place of each of my numbers. So I want to make sure that when I write my 33 and my 21, that the 3 and the 1 are neatly stacked on top of each other. So I'll begin with the 33 on top, and then I want to make sure I put my times symbol here, and then I'm going to put my 21 underneath the 33. So I've stacked them vertically, and I've carefully lined up the two numbers that are in the ones place in each of my two-digit numbers. And now I can begin my multiplication. So first, I want to start by multiplying the 33 times the 1, which is the digit that's in the ones place of my 21. And I'm going to write that product, the 33 times 1, right underneath this line. And I'm going to start by what goes in the ones place. So I go 1 times 3 is 3, and I write my answer really neatly here in the ones place column. And then I multiply 1 times this 3, and I write my answer, which is 3, really neatly over here in the tens place column. So then my next step, I've taken care of this 1 times 3 and the 1 times 3. I'm now going to move over in the number that's down below here, so the 21, and now I want to multiply the 2. I want to multiply 33 times the 2, which is in the tens place of my 21. And I'm going to multiply that by the 33 by 2. And when we multiply, we're going to write the product, or the answer to this next part, right below the 33 that we just calculated. But first, since I'm now working in my tens place, first I want to put a 0 right here in the ones place of this next product. And I'm going to begin then by writing my answers to my multiplication here in the tens column, because now I'm working with my tens. So I do the same thing here when I did the 1 times 3 and the 1 times 3 and wrote it here. I'm now going to do the same thing with the 2. So I've got my 0 here to hold the ones place. I'm now working with this 2 that's in the tens place, and I say 2 times 3, and I have all my multiplication tables memorized, so I know that 2 times 3 equals 6, and I write my answer right here in the tens column. And then I move over and I do 2 times 3 again, which is 6, and I write that answer right over here which actually ends up to be in the hundreds place column. So now what I do is I have these two products of 1 times 33 and 20 times 33, and I'm going to add my two products together to get my final answer. And so I do this like we've learned to add, starting over in the right hand position in my ones place. I add 3 plus 0, which is 3. And I place that here, everything neatly lined up in the ones place. Then I move over to the two numbers here in my tens place, and I add those two together. So 3 plus 6 equals 9. And I place my 9 here, nice and neatly in the tens place column. And then I simply have 6 here, or 0 plus 6, or 6 plus 0. I have a 6 here in my hundreds place. So I go ahead and put my 6 right here. So I am now finished with my work. And I can see that using these steps of multiplication, I have found the answer to 33 times 21 equals 693. We are now going to look at a multiplication problem in which we multiply a 3-digit number times a 3-digit number. Multiplying 3-digit numbers is really similar to multiplying 2-digit numbers, but we're going to continue on to the hundreds place in our calculations. So let's look at 123 times 456. So 123 times 456. First, we're going to begin by stacking our numbers vertically. So I'm going to put my 1, 2, 3 on top and my 4, 5, 6 on the bottom. And I want to be really careful to work organized and neatly and line up each of the digits that are in the ones place, each of the digits that are in the tens place, and each of the digits that are in the 100s place. So let's begin with our 123, and then my times symbol is going to go over here to the side, and there'll be a line underneath here, and then I want to be really careful to line up the 6, which is in the ones place of my number that's going to go underneath, needs to be lined up really neatly with the 3, and then the 5 I want to line up really neatly with the 2, and the 4 goes with the 1 in the hundreds place. So once I have these all lined up by place value, I can begin my multiplication. So we're going to work one place value at a time. We're going to begin by multiplying 123 times the 6, which is in our ones place. So let's begin with that, and the product, the answer to that multiplication problem, is going to go in the first line, the first row here underneath my line. So I start over here by going 6 times 3, 6 times 3, as I have all my multiplication tables memorized, and I know you're working on yours too. 6 times 3 equals 18. And remember that any time that I have an answer that's more than one digit, I'm just going to put the part that's in the ones place here, and I'm going to regroup or carry the number that's in the tens place, which in this case is 1 because it's 18. I'm going to regroup and carry that 1 over to the tens column. So I so far have 6 times 3 equals 18. And then I'm still working to multiply my 6, but now I'm going to multiply 6 times the 2 in the 123. And so I know that 6 times 2 is 12. And I have to add the 1 that I carried over here. And so my answer is 13. So again, I'm going to put the 3 of my answer 13 here in this next column. And I'm going to regroup or carry the 1 of the 13 into the next column and write it right here above my hundreds place. And then I continue to multiply by 6. I'm not finished yet with my first product, so I do 6 times 1. 6 times 1 equals 6, and I have to make sure, not forget to add my 1 here that I carried or regrouped and my answer then is 7. So I'm going to place my 7 here in the hundreds place. Again, make sure that as you're working on these, you're keeping all of your answers nice and neatly written in columns. Ones place, tens place, hundreds place. Now we're going to move on to multiplying the 123 times the 5. So now I've finished multiplying by the digit that's in the ones place. And now I need to move over and multiply 123 times the digit that's in the tens place. Now, just to keep myself organized here, I'm going to erase these little numbers that I put up here, because on this next multiplication, when I multiply by 5, I'm most likely going to need to do some regrouping and carrying as well. And I want to make sure that I don't mix up the numbers that I've regrouped and carried from a previous product. So before I begin though to multiply the 123 times 5, I need to remember to put a 0 in the ones place of my next row, because I'm telling myself here I'm now working with the tens. I'm not working with the ones place anymore, but I need to hold this position by putting a 0 there. So I place a 0 here and I go to work. So now I'm going to multiply 5 times 3, and then 5 times 2, and then 5 times 1. So let's begin with the 5 times 3. So I come over here and say 5 times 3 equals 15. And so I'm going to place the 5 of the 15 here, and I'm going to carry the 1 of the 15 to the next calculation over here to the next column in the tens place. And then I'm going to multiply 5 times 2, which I know is 10. And I don't want to forget that I have one that I carried though. I have one that I regrouped that I need to add to that answer. So 5 times 2 is 10, add 1 is 11. And I'm going to write the 1 of the 11 here in the hundreds place. And I'm going to write the 1 that goes in the tens place of the 11 here in the next column. I've regrouped or carried to the next column. And then I do my next calculation. So I've already done my 5 times 3. I've already done my 5 times 2. Got to keep track. And now I'm doing my 5 times 1. So 5 times 1 is 5. Add 1 is 6. And so I place my answer to that number right here. Place my answer to that multiplication right here in the now thousands place column. So now I have finished calculating by the number in my ones place. I've finished multiplying 123 times 6, which is 738. And then I've also finished multiplying my 123 times the number that's in my tens place, which is the 5. And I got 6,150 here. Now, in a 3-digit multiplication, at this point, I continue doing the same pattern, but now I'm going to move over to my hundreds place. And I'm going to multiply 123 times 4, which is in my hundreds place. And I need to make sure and mark the position of the ones place and the tens place with zeros. So this time I'm not just going to add the 1 0 to the ones place that I added here. I'm also going to make sure and put another 0 over here in the tens place to mark that position and know that now I'm working with the hundreds. And so I'm going to now multiply 4 times 3, 4 times 2, and 4 times 1. And my answers to each of those multiplications are all going to go here, here, and even over here. So I've got my columns all neatly marked, and I know that my first answer is going to go here because I'm working with the hundreds place, and this is the hundreds place column. So I start out with 4 times 3, which is 12. Oh, let me erase my little carries over here so that I can keep good track of them for the next time around, or for the next multiplication. So now I do my 4 times 3, which is 12, and I put the 2 of the 12 here in the hundreds place, and I put the 1 of the 12 here in the next column and carry or regroup it to this next column. Then I do 4 times 2, which is 8, add 1, 9, and I put my answer right here. Now in this case, my answer was less than 10, so I don't need to do any regrouping or carrying to this third position. So 4 times 2 is 8, add 1 is 9. I place my answer here, and I'm almost finished with my multiplication. I now do 4 times 1, which is simply 4, and write my answer here in this next column to the left. So now I'm in the 10,000s place over here. And finally, what I have to do to get my final answer on this problem, I want to make sure this is a very clear plus sign, because now I need to add the 3 products together. The 738 plus 6,150 plus 49,200. So I do my addition, like we've learned to do our long addition, and we might need to do some regrouping and carrying in this addition problem as well. So now I start by working over here in my ones place column. 8 plus 0 is 8. So I place my answer right here, nice and neatly in my ones place. And then I move over here to the tens place, and I do a 3 plus 5 plus 0, which is 8. So I put my 8 here again. Moving over to my hundreds column, my hundreds place, I do 7 plus 1 is 8. Add 2 is 10. And so I do need to regroup now and carry because I have a number that's 10 or greater. And so I'm going to put the 0 of my answer 10 here in this column, and I'm going to put the 1 of my answer 10 over in the next column, carrying it over. And now I need to add, I like to look at this as 9 plus 1 is 10. Add 6. It's a little easier to add to tens. So 9 plus 1 is 10, add 6 is 16. So I'm going to put my 6 here, and again I need to carry because 16 is greater than 9, and so I have a 2-digit answer. I put my 6 here and my 1 here in the next column, carry it over. And my last final calculation here is a simple 4 plus 1, and I place my answer here, 5. So I can see that after all this work and all this calculating, 123 times 456 equals 56,088. It is very important that you add a 0 when you start multiplying with the next digit in the multiplier. So in our example, when we started multiplying by 5, we placed a 0 here in the ones place. And when we started multiplying by 4, we placed 2 zeros here in the ones place and in the tens place. If you do not place these zeros correctly in your problem, your answer will not be correct. Be very careful about placing your zeros.